The Washington Post has just reported that Trump has ordered the removal of information on slavery at multiple national parks in an effort to scrub corrosive ideology. That also includes this famous photograph of a slave with scars on his back. Listen, I don't take the word fascism lightly, but fascists often rewrite and suppress history to craft a story of national greatness and purity. That certainly sounds like what's happening here. What do you think?
While we're distracted with the Charlie Kirks and the Candace Owens and the wars in Ukraine and Russia and Israel and Gaza and Puerto Rico and Venezuela and all things negative, guys, listen up. Trump administration orders removal of information around slavery at national parks, including a historic photograph of a formerly enslaved man showing scars on his back. The removals were in line with President Trump's March executive orders directing to eliminate information that reflects a corrosive ideology that disparages historic Americans. And the National Parks Service officials are broadly interpreting that directed to apply to information on racism, sexism, slavery, gay rights, and persecution of indigenous people. They're trying to erase African American history and indigenous history, guys. This is not okay. I don't know why more people aren't outraged at this point, because this is what they've done in the Holocaust. This administration, their actions points to the direction that they're trying to preserve white supremacy. They're racist. This is the actions that I'm talking about. We need to know this history. Our children need to know the history. So if they go to repeat history again, they know how to identify it when it comes. Why aren't they removing Christopher Columbus statues all over America? Exactly. That's one to think about. They're actively trying to erase history. Guys, they try to tarnish the reputation of Martin Luther King. Donald Trump couldn't stand having a head statue of Martin Luther King in his Oval Office, and he asked for it to be removed. I don't know. If this doesn't get you upset, I don't know what will, guys. While we're all distracted by all the negative stuff happening in the world right now, this is what's happening behind the scenes. And they hate to see us say, well, this president and this administration are racist, and anybody that supports them like the Charlie Kirks. So there you have it, guys. Make sure you like this video, comment, repost, share, and as always.
All right, in a move that's indefensible, the Trump administration has ordered the removal of all exhibits and signs related to slavery at numerous national parks. So the Trump administration engaging in real time in a revisionist history in the country, getting rid of all exhibits and signs related to slavery at national parks. And this is consistent with what the Trump administration is doing. As Trump said himself, he said, America, we focus too much on slavery, and that somehow teaching about slavery teaches kids to hate the country. You cannot be an American and think that you're a patriot when you don't learn accurate history of the country. The America is a great country, the greatest nation on earth. We've done so much good in the world. It doesn't mean that we haven't at times not lived up to the expectations of the founders and to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all. Teaching about history doesn't make kids hate America. It makes kids understand the history of this country so we don't make the same mistakes again. Like when Stephen Miller talks about suspending habeas corpus, we learn about what happened after World War II when we had Japanese internment camps and the shameful history of suspending habeas corpus for them. In the same regard, teaching about slavery is important not only to inform us about what happened, but slavery informs us about Jim Crow, and about Reconstruction, and about the Civil Rights Act, and about the right for freedom and equality for all. Trump engaging in revisionist history, to me, is the least patriotic thing you can do. This is what President Trump does. It's insane. Call your representatives and tell them to back off this decision, and tell them he's got to change this. This is an abomination to history. It's an abomination to the national parks. It's an abomination to all people who care about truth.
If you talk about slavery in America, if we talk about America's history, the black community, African American, and the black people really played a very huge role in crafting the history of America currently. When you talk about slavery, you should also remember that the same black people are the ones that experienced this monster that was called slavery from the white people back then. Majority of the blacks in America, especially the African American and some black communities, went to America. This is according to Malcolm X. They went to America as forced slave. They went there to provide slave labor. They went to the United States as slavery back in the days some decades ago. But now, this history has nothing to do with Trump's administration. Donald Trump is working tirelessly to ensure that he is deleting all the America's history. And for the black people, they are terming this as targeting the black community, because deleting the American history by removing all these slavery exhibits in museums in National Park, they are saying it is really targeting the black people, because removing exhibits like the Harriet Tubman, the Scratchback picture, these are just some of the greatest black American history that Donald Trump is trying to do away with it. In a recent executive order that Donald Trump signed that was restoring the truth and sanity of American history, he ordered the museums, national parks, national monuments to take down all the slavery exhibits and all the sculptures that were portraying what the white people was doing to the black people in terms of restoring the sanity of the United States, saying that these things are not required anymore. But for the black community, they are seeing Donald Trump's executive order on the same matter is targeting them, because when we talk about America's history, we should never forget about the black people and the black community, because they really played a very huge role on creating and forming America's history. In this video, let's watch some of their comments about the same topic, and then I'll be giving my diggings and commentaries at the end of this video. In the meantime, subscribe while you keep on watching.
So now, slavery is considered a coercive ideology under the Donald Trump administration. The history of African Americans in this nation is now considered coercive ideology. A history that was only created because white men went to Africa and forced us over here. It's a coercive ideology that Donald Trump's people created. And so because of Donald Trump and all his infinite wisdom, he will now remove all exhibits and signs at national parks that illustrate or depicts slavery. When in the hell are we going to get back to these eggs? Y'all remember Donald Trump campaigning on the cost of eggs, the cost of gas, the cost of having to deal with Donald Trump as president, period. When are we going to get back to that?
French reaction breaking news. The Trump administration is beginning to remove all slavery exhibits across the national parks in the United States. Here's what you need to know. In March, President Trump signed an executive order restoring truth and sanity back into American history, which calls for the removal of signs and exhibits that could potentially disparage Americans, past or present. This includes displays about slavery, indigenous displacement, even climate change, all flagged under Trump's executive order. Park staff have already been told to start pulling materials immediately. But this is a clear erasure of America's past, its painful past. And you're replacing history with propaganda.
As we all know, bullshit ain't about nothing. So yesterday, our president signed an executive order, and this order was to remove all forms of slavery or anything that identified as slavery or anything that anybody may find offensive that, that may hurt America's reputation. He ordered all of that shit removed from the public parks, from museums. Like, this man is literally trying to erase black contribution through slavery or whatever, the Muskegee Airmen. All of this shit he's trying to erase as though we don't exist. Like, what must this man do for you guys to realize what is going on? Like, tell me exactly what must be done for you to realize exactly what the fuck he doing, what the fuck he's saying, what his plan is. Because if you can't see what the fuck he doing and don't see how racist his moves and actions are, then goddamn it, you blind. And just because you scared don't mean that he gonna stop doing what the fuck he doing. And fear does not stop shit. What we need to do is stop bullshitting and start showing love to one another, because you know one thing, even ants know that if they stick together, they not gonna be fucked with by a bigger monster. And I promise you, if we stick together and if these muckers know that if you touch one of us, you touch all of us, they'll leave us alone. Bullshit ain't about nothing.
Hello everyone, and today we back with Trump news because it kind of goes into the video I made the other day about YN's whitewashing history. Well, Trump just came out on his Twitter page and let y'all know that's exactly what he's doing. He basically called out the Smithsonian and other museums throughout the United States for being too woke about how bad slavery is when it did nothing but gave his people, because he did say our people, and our people is his people, not mine. He's talking about from his standpoint. So he's saying that slavery gave his people a better leg up in this country that he's the president of now. So he's saying he's going to go through these museums and take out all this bad slavery history and put history that's now, because he said now is more popping than ever. Nigga, it's because we in a digital social media era. They had cameras and shit like that during Bush and shit time too, and I don't think you more popping than George Bush. You not more popping than Richard Nixon too. You ain't did no piece of gate. You did Epstein Island. Whoop-de-doo. This man did a gate that's still happening today. George Bush was reading the bro, his father in the Rothschild. You know what, bro? And you think that this time period is popping for you to put this history now? So you want people 200-300 years from now to hear about what? COVID, Zeke diseases, and then inflation? What are we talking about right now? And I'm tired of him saying that stuff that been in the museum since the beginning of museums ever being created. How's that being woke now when they been in the museum? It ain't like the museum just took slavery stuff one day, took it from whatever country they took it from, and then just brought it in the museum yesterday. I'm so lost.
I was going through the museums personally was an overemphasis on slavery. And I think that
an overemphasis of slavery. Let that sink in. An overemphasis of slavery in a museum. And I believe that she is talking about the African American History Museum. She felt that the exhibits were emphasizing too heavily on talking about the story of slavery in the United States. Now, for those of you who may or may not know, the official system or the legalized system of slavery lasted in the United States for 246 years, okay? So from 1619, when the first African stepped foot on North American soil, to 1865, there was a legalized system in this country to oppress African Americans. So just to give you a bit of backstory, about a week or so ago, the head of the board of directors for the Smithsonian Museum, Lonnie Bunch, received a letter from the administration informing him that 6 of the museums that fall under the Smithsonian's brands will go under a review to ensure that wokeism is not permeating throughout the exhibits in the museum. And instead, the administration wants these museums to focus more on the American exceptionalism experience. Okay, so American exceptionalism is the theme of the day. And so there are currently individuals, I'm not sure what their credentials are, but there are currently individuals or a group of individuals who have been tasked by the administration to conduct audits of these museums to see what goes and what stays, basically. And once the review is completed, these museums will have 120 days to make all necessary changes that are cited in the review. So this is the first thing I will say. This is not a partisan message, okay? This is a message by a concerned citizen who is a lover of history, all right?
The purpose of history is to accurately document and tell the story of what is unfolding in a particular time in history or within a particular country, okay? The purpose of history is not to create a story with the goal of making individuals feel a certain way. Your responsibility as a historian, as a history teacher, as someone who is versed and trained to, tell the story is to report the facts accurately as it happened and allow people to come to whatever conclusion they come to based off of the historical information provided. So with this review now happening, my concern is that not enough people know that this is actually occurring, and B, this particular audit is very dangerous because I have two primary questions. So for the information that is cited as not being exemplary enough to the excellence of America, what are you going to do with those particular exhibits? So let's say it comes back that the story of Emmett Till is too negative or too depressing. Are you going to destroy the casket that is in the museum? Because his casket, the last time I was there, was present in the museum and some other archives from that time. So if that is deemed not to be uplifting enough, what are you going to do with those materials? Is it going to be preserved so that it could possibly be put back into the museum? Or will it be destroyed? That's my first question. The second question that I will continue to ask is, what is the credentials of the persons or individuals that are conducting these audits? What would qualify them as qualified professionals to go into these museums and determine what is appropriate for us to learn about? All right. And the third question I have, and I know I said I had two, but the third question I have is, what is the criteria that is going to be used to conduct this audit? When I was reading the particular comments from the video that I show at the top of this post, someone made a really, really good point about what is going on, and especially as it relates to slavery and how we discuss slavery. And that individual wrote, there are certain times in our nation's history, so I'm talking about the history of the United States, where people say never forget. So we can talk about incidents such as 9/11. We're always told never forget. We could talk about Pearl Harbor. We're told never to forget. We can talk about D-Day and our soldiers who lost their lives on D-Day. We tell them never to forget. However, when it comes to slavery, it is, well, we need to put that in the past. We need to turn the page. Why do we keep bringing it up? And I understand that certain people feel uncomfortable with certain truths, and that is okay. It is okay to feel uncomfortable, but that does not mean that you get a chance to say that history should not be told.
So I seen this post talking about how Donald Trump was removing exhibitions about slavery or whatever from around the United States or whatever. And I know that's going to enrage some people, but I want to give you a certain perspective to sit with. Imagine if this is all happening and all the slavery bullshit is being undone and erased. Imagine if it's because it never happened. Just stay with me. Imagine they can't say, hey, we lied, but how they do it is by cleaning it up, erasing it, because it never happened. Imagine the pictures that were photoshopped before we had access to Photoshop. Imagine it being all a lie. Because years ago, Texas was the first place to do in their history books and say that we were indentured servants. It was in Texas, and a mother who actually sat down with her child and read that shit and was like, that's bullshit. And she went after the textbook company and made them change it. But imagine, because we're in the era of truth, whether you want to believe the truth or not. Now we know that people who we did book reports on, that wasn't their names and it wasn't their positions, okay? Now we know that they was trafficking people to Liberia, okay? We have all of this information. So if you choose to still push a narrative who's the real problem? The liar or the person who refuses to see the lie? So he's removing all these things about slavery and this and that, and they're rolling back DEI or DIE. It ain't DIE, DEI. And imagine if it's because the shit never happened. So imagine us going back, right? You think we're going to stop here? No. We're going to keep going. So we're going to keep going back in history till we restored balance. And that means that you also are going to have to be okay with letting go your title of being black, African American. Why? Because those are reclassifications to the indigenous American. But if you don't want to see the truth and know the truth, stand over there with them. Please get the fuck out the way. While everybody else wakes up to the truth of the royalty, of the indigenous, of the original, while they're undoing their lies. But they cannot come out and say, hey, we lied. But they're going to try and correct their wrongs, right their wrongs. So you should too. You are indigenous. You are original. If you don't even want to claim that you're indigenous to America, you're indigenous to this planet. Yeah. So let them undo it. Let them undo it. Let them undo the areas where they carved out little spaces for black people to say that we belong to. No. Let them undo it. Because we are the majority on this planet. We don't need little carving out of spaces for us. We are the space. Let them undo it.
A new directive by the Trump administration is leading to the removal of history exhibits. Exhibits and signage related to slavery, racism, indigenous peoples' history, and other aspects of the United States history are being removed from national parks across the U.S. This comes after a March executive order from Trump which directs the Interior Department to remove anything that they call corrosive ideology. Effects of this are already being seen. At Harpers Ferry National Historical Park, which is the site of abolitionist John Brown's raid against slavery, National Park staff are being told to remove related signage. At the President's House site in Philadelphia, where George Washington enslaved people during his presidency, exhibits even mentioning slavery are being flagged as non-compliant by the new policy. Jonathan Zimmerman, a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, called this an enormous increase in federal control over what the public is allowed to learn at civic institutions. He also pointed out the contradiction that this is coming from an administration that has often argued for less federal control when it comes to education. The story raises huge questions about who actually writes historical narratives and what happens when key aspects of our history are taken out.
Now, as you all know, especially some of black people, according to Malcolm X, black people went to America as slaves. They were forced to live in America. For many decades ago, these people went into America as slaves. But now, some of them find their path and some of them went there later. That is why in America, we have black Americans and African Americans. And these black people are now the major target about this executive order. Because when talking about slavery, we know very well that the white people did this to the black people. We know very well that these white people were doing this to the black people many years ago. Now, what this executive order, what are the potential effects on the black community? Number one, feeling of erasure and invalidation. For many years, black Americans, slavery is not just an history, but a legacy whose effect, maybe let's say systemic racism, economic disparities, and cultural trauma are still felt today. Removing exhibits or minimizing this history risks making people feel that their suffering, their history, and their ancestors' experiences are being minimized or released or erased. Now, number two, erosion of education and public understanding. What do you mean by this? These exhibits often serve as an educational purpose, helping both black and non-black people to understand the full history of the country, including injustices. Removing them could lead to gaps in public knowledge or sanitized version of the US history that omits critical lesson. Without these signs, future generation may lack context for why racial inequalities exist, making it harder for this generation to address them. Yeah? Now, what are the psychological impact on black suffering? When institutions, those are of course government, park, museum, downplay or remove representation of slavery and its brutalities, it can be psychologically harmful. This suggests that such suffering isn't worthy of commemoration or even mention. It can feed feeling of invisibility or marginalization, especially for the people who have family history tied to what is being removed. Of course, now another thing is also trust in institution could be declined. Why? Because many in black people or black community already have reasons to be skeptical of the government or public institution when it comes to fair treatment. Moves like this could reinforce beliefs that this state does not value or respect black history unless it is comfortable or non-controversial. This could lead to less engagement with institutions like museums, historical sites, parks, or even civil more broadly. Number 5, political mobilization and backlash. On the flip side, these kind of actions tend to galvanize activism. Removing or censoring painful aspects of history often lead to pushbacks. Communities may organize protests, lobby to preserve exhibits, or challenge the removal of these exhibits in court. It could become a flashpoint in election, cultural wars, debates about work history, etc. Number 6, impact on heritage, tourism, cultural pride, and identity. Black Americans sites that prevent or preserve stories of slavery, when done well, are places of remembrance, reflection, and when pride in resilience, survival, and resistance. If these things are removed, something of cultural identity is totally lost. These are the sources of collective memory and cultural heritage. Erasing them weakens the richness of that memory. Now, number 7, amplified sense of injustice. Because slavery is foundational to much of Americans' wealth and social structure, hiding it or removing it reminds of it may feel like an effort to avoid responsibility or reckoning. For many, this sense that America has yet fully comfort in the past and the acknowledgement is always conditioned, partial, or subject to revision, it may prove that slavery was something that these people embraced, but they don't want it to be felt that they embraced slavery in the past years. So removing these signs or these slavery exhibits might even be considered as deleting black history, because we know when talking about slavery in America and the US, most of the black people have past experience about it. Their ancestors and ancestors have really told them about this. We also see those pictures in those museums. Majority of them, they are pictures of the black people. And also, let's say this great woman, Harriet Tubman, she was among the people who created the black history by releasing slaves that were working under certain masters, and these masters were the white people. So erasing all this information about slavery is totally erasing black history, erasing all this information or taking them down. But again, if You don't want to have this history. The simple fact is that you can change history, but you can never delete history, however much you try. But those are just some of my research, some of the things that I did, and the impact that I saw the black people could be victims of this. And my commentaries also. Tell me what you think in the comment section. Let's have a discussion and hope to see you in my next episode.